Shane, welcome to the Rocky Mountain Writer Podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Great to have you on, and we look forward to you coming out to Colorado Gold. Have you been out to Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers Conference before?
I have not. I have done I think it's the Pikes Peak Writers Conference in Colorado some years back, but I have not done Rocky Mountain. I'm always thrilled to come to Colorado. It's a really great state. I imagine Colorado in September is a great time to be there, and I'm looking forward to it very much.
Awesome. Yeah, Pikes Peak writers, we're really close kind of cousins, I guess. You know, we tend to just focus on fiction, and they are a little more secular in their approach to books and things like that. But they're a great organization, and they put out a fabulous conference. We can only hope to do as well, but I think we do. So,
good,
as you'll see, yeah. So let's just get a little bit of a background about you out first, and then let's get into a little bit more about what our attendees can, do to best put themselves in a good position to prepare to have a conversation with you. Talk to us a little bit about your background, how you got into this, and don't skip over the stunt movie stuff, okay?
Sure, I will keep it as brief as possible because of all the how I got into publishing stories, stuntman to agent is definitely the weirdest that I've heard of. Long story short, I finished up college. I was 23, 24 years old. I did not feel like becoming an adult just yet. I've got a lot of martial arts experience from a very young child. I was doing martial arts, and I decided maybe I'll go to LA for a couple of years. It's a great place to stave off adulthood. I know a couple people in the business. If I become the next Jackie Chan, great. If I don't, I can always come back and find a job at that point. So did stunts for a couple of years, a lot of really bad straight to DVD action movies where the hero beats up 7 people at once. I played like thug number 4 on those kind of fight scenes. Lots of fun, never a career ambition for me. Ran its course, moved back.
Did you escape injury free?
For the most part, there are some bumps and bruises, and it's very hard when you're doing kind of controlled, choreographed fight scenes to not get hit once in a while. But no broken bones, which is nice. A couple of cuts and some black eyes, but what are you gonna do? Honestly, the injuries I've sustained during stunt career are actually prepared me quite well for a career as an agent, because you were just beat up all the time in this industry. It paved the way. But yeah, again, like I said, that ran its course. I moved to New York in 2008, thinking I was going to get into finance for a while, but 2008 was not the best time to get into finance, because that's when the bubble burst, the economy collapsed, and all that madness happened. So that was out, and I knew that I liked to read, and I knew that books had to be a job of some kind. So I literally Googled the word book jobs one day while on the job hunt, and just started cold calling and navigating that weird internet maze. Stumbled somehow on the Writers House website, called them up and chatted for a while, secured myself an internship there. And then right place, right time, Jody Reamer, a very successful YA agent, Stephanie Meyer's agent, John Green, a lot of very big YA titles, was looking for an assistant. She had a martial arts background as well. We bonded over getting beaten up together, and started working for her. And the rest is history, as they say.
Wow. So with the 2008, you started poking around, you found the internship pretty much right away?
Yeah, I started poking around in 2008. I started in September of 2008 as an intern, and then Jody hired me in January of 2009, and I never left. And I've been building my own list since about 2012 or so. So over 10 years as an agent.
So she sprung you loose at some point and said, just go do your own thing.
Absolutely. It was really nice in that, we got along very, very well. But in terms of our personal taste and interest, what we represent, we were very different. YA, Twilight, as much as I appreciate that kind of a book, it really is something I'm looking to do. So we never really had to butt heads over projects. And I felt like I could feel a niche at Writers House where other agents maybe weren't in that space. So what I liked about working for Jody is once she felt that I was ready to do my own thing and I was able to stay in my own list, she was glad to let me go. It was nice. It's a very good relationship. I have nothing but great things to say about Jody.
That's great. Well, my impression of Writers House, been around a long time, obviously, is just really, and I'm not trying to set you up or butter you up, but really one of the class houses, literary agent houses of New York, and obviously of the publishing world as a result.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's funny. I didn't even know that when I was applying. I had no clue what agents did. I knew that books got written by authors and somebody at Barnes and Noble put them on the shelf. I knew nothing in between. And I only stumbled on the Writers House website because the building looked really pretty. It was this really beautiful brownstone on 26th Street in New York. I'm like, and it looked like a Hollywood rendition of an agency. So I'm like, oh, that's a cool place to work. I'll call them, see if they're hiring. I literally, as a stunt man tends to do, fell ass backwards into one of the top agencies in the country. Very, very lucky, very fortunate.
Yeah. How many agents today with Writers House? Do you have a rough idea?
Oh man, that's a great question. We feel like we've been expanding a lot over the years. We're bringing people in, another very talented agents, maybe 15 or 16 total around there. Very,
Yeah.
very good people to work with.
Yep. And along the way, did you ever have an inkling to write at all, or was that simply off the table once you started becoming an agent?
Yeah, it's funny. I have a quote unquote second job. I cover the New England Patriots for an NFL website called Pat's Pulpit. So I do some writing, some sports writing. And everyone's like, oh, Alec, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. And I don't know. I feel like I spend every waking moment in and around books. When I get home, I don't feel like writing more, but maybe someday I'll write a book. I've also got nothing really important to say in terms of story. I think I have to have this. I feel like writers really need to have this story that's just like dying to get out. It's like a worm in your brain. If you don't release it, you're going to go crazy, even more than writers already are crazy. So maybe once that earworm burrows itself into my brain and I have this story I have to get out, I'll write something down. But in the meantime, I'm more than happy to let people much more talented than I am do all the hard work for me.
That's great. All right, so let's talk about a little bit about coming out to conferences. You've done it before, as you mentioned. You probably do it a fair amount. First of all, why do you go to conferences? Are you looking to add to your list? What's in it for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things from a professional side of conferences. Obviously, it's great to meet authors, interact with authors. It's not as much about the writing because I'm not going to read your work at a conference, but there are people that you connect with, and so much of the author agent relationship is about that connection, that symbiotic relationship, the vibe that you get with an agent, and you just can't get that via email or phone call or whatever it is. And so you interacting with people in a more kind of informal professional setting is really helpful to kind of get a good sense of who I'm not maybe looking to work with from a kind of a personal level. It's great professional networking. It's very rare that agents get to talk shop to each other because we're all at different agencies. We're all doing our own thing. So it's a really good way to interact with people in the industry. And you just meet people at conferences that even if you go to a conference and don't sign a client at that particular conference, maybe someone you met at that conference in 2 years will be at a party and their husband is looking for a new agent or something along those lines. It just the groundwork you lay at conferences tend to have this ripple effect that pay off years and years down the line. And they're also just a lot of fun. A bunch of book nerds together at a hotel, having a good time, talking shop, talking craft. I think you really can't go wrong.
That's great. What's your advice for writers coming to either, chat you up after a panel, to come to a pitch session? What are some of the recommendations you'd have just to help them get in a good space to be as prepared as possible to make a connection with you?
Yeah, I think there are two things I would always keep in mind, and they're fairly related. One, I feel like authors, they put a lot of emphasis on pitch sessions. They get very nervous for pitch sessions. They're worried about fumbling over their words or not making a good impression. I think it's very important to keep in mind that you as the author have exactly what I want. I am there to read your stuff, to hear about your book, to love your work, to sign you, and to make everyone a lot of money, right? I don't make any money unless I love your book and I read it and I sell it. So I think that it's kind of like this weird kind of power imbalance where authors think that agents have all this control and all this power over them. It's like, you are the ones with the power. I'm really excited to meet authors. You should never feel bad about talking about your book. That's why you're here. I'm going to want to read it if you do a good job talking about it and making sure that there's no real reason for you to feel intimidated in any capacity. If I didn't want to talk to authors, I wouldn't come. I didn't have to come. I wasn't required to. I'm very excited to be there. I want to be there and I want to talk to you. And so obviously there are boundaries, there's always that story about following an agent to the bathroom or,
Yeah.
find the room they're in and sliding stuff under the door. But, as long as you're not a complete sociopath, about how you go about talking to an agent, I think you're going to have a great conversation, and you're going to realize that we're just people who like to read too, and we're all kind of in it for the same reasons. And the second thing I'd say, it's very, very similar as well. I'm always personally, I'm speaking for myself here, of course, but I'm always the most excited to hear pitches from authors whose excitement for their project and their craft, it just kind of permeates through who they are. And that goes hand in hand with not being nervous. You know, I would never tell anybody what they can and can't do when they're talking to an author about a book, or an agent about a book, excuse me. But if you're just like here and we're talking about books the way you talk about sports or fishing or another hobby that you really enjoy and you're passionate about, that resonates, and that kind of leaves an impression on me. So the more you can relax, the more you can realize that we're all there for the same reason, I think the happier we're all going to be.
That's great. What messages or what sort of context do you bring out in terms of just what the industry, it seems like the industry is always changing a little bit, if not a lot. Is there something that you could relate right now in 2023 coming off the pandemic, and just what the market is sort of looking for, what you know about the market is looking for, that you can help writers think about, you know, that overture to you? I mean, is there some part of the equation that you're going to let folks know the industry is really going this way and it needs this kind of material?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I usually tend to close conferences, panels, interviews, whatever, with this piece of advice, but I'm happy to insert it right here in the middle of this conversation. If you take nothing away from this conference, from this podcast, from whatever, you need to understand, you need to know and completely acknowledge with every ounce of yourself that absolutely nobody in the publishing industry has any idea what's going on, what they're talking about, what they're doing, or what works, ever. We never have, we never will. And anybody that tells you this is going to work or this is going to sell is lying to you. Publishing is not an industry. It's not a business. It's a casino. And we're all there rolling the dice, trying to figure it out. And if you understand that, it's very freeing in that you don't have to worry about trends or market value or printer shortages or layoffs or imprints. It is all about writing something you're excited about, something you love, and something you want to live with for a very long time. That is the first and only rule, I think, of what's working in publishing. It's working because you want it to work and you're excited about it. So much of getting a book deal is just blind, dumb luck and things aligning and stars aligning. So surrounding yourself with people who are passionate and love the industry and love what you do is paramount. Give yourself the best chance. You know, you're at a blackjack table. You should know how to play blackjack. You know what the rules are, but you can't guarantee yourself a win every single time. So it's all about putting yourself in the best position through passion and love. That's the best advice I can ever give.
Well, it seems appropriate because I've always said that you got to win 4 lotteries. You got to finish a book. That's one lottery. Second lottery is find an agent. Third lottery is get a publisher. Fourth lottery is have it do well. Yeah. And if you go in 4 lotteries, you should feel pretty darn lucky, like you've threaded the needle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it's funny, you know, I'm sure you have some books out there that you think are absolutely terrible that are bestsellers, and books that are absolutely amazing that no one's heard of, and there's no real rhyme or reason to it. And publishing is so weird. It's such like an insular industry where even though there's a lot of people around you, it's such like a solitary thing. You're usually writing alone, or you're reading alone, or you're editing alone, and no one knows what anyone else is going through at a particular point in time. So yeah, I mean, you really have to have a lot of stars aligned for things to work out for you. It's just true.
Yep. And the timelines are obviously so far in the future. What the public is hungry for in 18 or 24 months could be a lot different than what an editor comes to you today and says, hey, you got any horror?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Not only that, just, you know, I feel like just the world of publishing aside, just the world is changing so rapidly. Every time you wake up, there's a new headline going on and there's a new crisis happening. And so you can't predict a week from now, let alone 2 years from now. And we're also, as authors, we're competing against Netflix and Hulu and notifications on your phone. And there's a lot of content out there. So it's really all about being all in.
Yeah. Just your thoughts on post-pandemic, just where we are, even forget the pandemic, just where we are in 2023. what is your take on the state of the industry? It seems like obviously there's still a ton of books being sold, a ton of books being put out. Do you have any just general thoughts about what you tell an author about setting their expectations about what's realistic?
Yeah, I mean, it's people are reading and they're writing more than ever. There are plenty of books coming out. I don't think there'll ever be a lack of books coming out. We're seeing an interesting rise in the indie author, and the mid-list author has now kind of become authors that are very successful at the indie level, and then they get noticed by the bigger publishers, and that kind of becomes their graduation. You're seeing, as more of a blanket statement, there are obviously many exceptions to what I'm about to say, but you're seeing these huge 12-house auctions for these massive advances, or you're seeing nothing. And it's not really that kind of mid-level, mid-list advance that used to allow an author to start their career. A lot of looking for big books, big water cooler books that become franchises and movies. And there's just kind of less seats at the table in that respect. But there's so many great publishers doing so much great work from the smaller press all the way up through the big five. And there's so many editors still out there. There's now great opportunities to get your book published and seen. Self-publishing is now a thing that's kind of gaining some more momentum in terms of just allowing different tiers of progress. And that there used to be this kind of Wild West where it's still there, but where literally anybody with a computer and a button can publish their book. And it's hard to stand out, from all of that. But there's a lot of smaller indie presses that do great work. It's a great place to cut your teeth, to learn the business a little bit, and then you can kind of graduate to the larger big houses from there. By no means is that the only way to do it, but it's just one of many options available to you as an author if you find yourself kind of floundering. As you mentioned earlier, Mark, this is not a fast business. Publishing moves at a glacially slow pace. And if you're a very prolific author who can write 3-4 books a year, it can be very frustrating, I imagine, for you. If I were to sell your book tomorrow, it's not coming out till 2025 at this point, at the earliest.
Yep.
You can do so much between now and then. And just for some authors who just write fast, they don't want to wait, and that's fine. So you can really custom tailor your publishing career to how you work best, which I think is really nice.
That's great. How much time do you spend paying attention to what's going on in the industry, or just consuming the industry versus looking at talent, reading talent, talking to your authors that are already on your list, negotiating for them? I mean, that's got to be, you're juggling a lot, I guess. What I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's funny. One of the things that was really hard for me to adjust to during the pandemic was, I'd always do either my client reading or my new submission reading. I'd always find these little pockets of my day as a commuter, as somebody who went out to grab lunch, as somebody who went for coffee. I lost my morning commute. I got a ton of reading done on my commute, standing in line at the burger joint, waiting for so a lot of the reading that got done throughout the course of my day, I had to kind of sit down and find more time to do that. A lot of the kind of industry awareness, obviously I subscribe to a lot of newsletters. There's Shelf Awareness, there's Edelweiss, there's some good kind of industry-wide newsletters. And we do company-wide meetings. We have people much more intelligent than I with their finger on the pulse. We're always comparing notes with other agencies and other agents at Writer's House. Obviously, I have a good relationship with editors, so I know what's going on behind the scenes. When editors have shakeups, a big part of the job of an agent, any agent, is to have those relationships, to know who's doing what and who's going where and what's been going on. So a lot of the drinks outings and the lunches that were lost during the pandemic, those are now coming back now, which is nice. It's not just reading. That's the easy part. Reading books I like is fun. I enjoy that part. So much is more just kind of managing, and there's really not I wish I could say there was some kind of schedule or structure to it, but some days are very reading intensive. Some days I have no time to do any reading. And it's all about kind of what needs to be done at that particular moment in time. Yep.
Are you personally sorting through submissions every day, or do you have an assistant who does that for you?
Nope. I am a one-man show. It is just me doing my submission sorting. Not that I wouldn't trust my assistant if I were to I actually don't have an assistant, so it's just me for that respect, but not that I wouldn't trust the voice or the judgment, but publishing is just so subjective that I would hate for someone to pass on something that I absolutely love, or for, I just feel like I feel more comfortable doing my own reading. I'm sure that'll change over the course of time, but right now it's all me.
And just give us an idea of the volume, if you don't mind, what you're looking at every day.
Yeah, sure. No problem. It's on average, I'd say between 20 and 40 a day. Today I have gotten, I'm looking at my submissions box right now. Submission today, I've gotten 23 submissions today. So that's kind of a lighter day for me, but it really depends on, sometimes it's just like, sometimes I feel like sometimes the authors will be like, hey, let's all query Alec today on 3, 1, 2, 3, and then it's all come in at once. And some days are a little quieter, it kind of comes in waves.
Nice to be wanted, or not so much sometimes.
It's a good problem to have. Obviously, I'd hate to be sitting here twiddling my thumbs if you're not constantly buried. One of the negatives of my job, there aren't very many, but one of the negatives of my job, it is definitely not it's not a 9 to 5, right? I don't clock out and home and watch TV. I am always working, because unfortunately, it stinks for a newer author, but as an unrepresented author looking for representation, you are unfortunately my last priority. You have to be, because I have my clients to service and other things I have to do to kind of service people I work for. But I also make sure I give you my full attention. You don't want an agent reading your submission when they're grumpy or hungry or tired. So you have to find time to work, and it just never stops. But again, the alternative is that no one wants to be represented by me, in which case I'm not going to have a job for much longer. So I will take it. I'm not complaining at all.
So of the 23, say, that came in today, just in general, do folks do their research? Do they know that they're reaching out to an agent that's writing that will rep what they write?
Sometimes yes, a lot of the times no, to be honest with you, which is very surprising. It's always very obvious to me, at least. I can always tell when an author has basically just cut and pasted the exact same query letter, and they've found every agent's email in the industry, and there's blasting the query off to them. I can also always tell when an author's done their homework. If they mention a book that they read that I represented, or they did some research online and they saw the kind of thing I'm looking for and thought I might be a good fit. These little snippets that go in the query letter go a really long way to stand out from the people that are clearly just blasting to anybody it's worth your while. I get the shotgun approach, but I personally always advise finding an agent that you really think will vibe with the work you do, not just for this book, but for your entire career. You don't want to, ideally you find an agent, you stick with that agent, and you're married and you're going through together and you're building a career together. But if you want to write thrillers and romance and picture books and sci-fi and memoir and graphic novels, find an agent who does all of those things, because if they love your thriller but they don't do romance, you're going to be screwed when you send the romance novel in. So it's really important to do your homework. It's not just finding an agent, it's finding the right agent.
Yep. I just ran across something, I don't know how old it is. I assume it's still current, that you are on a campaign to bring horror back. Is that still underway, and how's it going?
Yeah, no, I think horror, I'd love to say credit for the horror resurgence, but I think horror is actually having a bit of a moment right now. Especially, you see it on TV and film, a lot of horror movies and horror shows are very popular right now. You're seeing a lot more horror novels. I have a couple of wonderful horror authors on my list. It's really coming along. It's cool in that it's a wonderful time to get things that aren't vampires, werewolves, and zombies out. You're seeing new legends, new cultures, new monsters, new bad guys, and new faces. As much as I worship Stephen King, he's the reason I am in this industry. I grew up reading his stuff, but there are people that are just wildly talented out there who are great horror authors who are really coming up, and I'm excited to be part of that for sure.
Yep. Very cool. Well, I don't really get horror. I never really have. I do love Stephen King, but more on the other side of his stuff. But that's why there's so many different genres and so many different kinds of readers, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Yeah. All right. Well, I would like, as we start to wrap up here, is there maybe just a story, an anecdote, a story about, without naming names, or name names if you want to, about how you went to a conference one time and just this little moment in a bar or in the hall or something led to a conversation, and that blossomed into a relationship with you and then a career?
Yeah, great example of that. So we're talking about horror, good way to kind of close it out. In 2000 and maybe 14 or 15, I was at HorrorCon, which is now StokerCon, in, I believe, Atlanta, Georgia, excuse me. And I was at the bar having a beer and kind of taking some time in between, and an author came up and he sat down with me. He bought me a beer. Another conference advice: buying an agent a drink is a great way to get yourself in the door and talk books for a while. He bought me a beer and we were just talking, and he had a a novel that he wanted to pitch me, and I said, of course, I'd love to see it. I saw it, I read it, I liked his writing. I said, this isn't really for me. I don't think I can really sell werewolves right now. Again, this is 2015, but I like your writing. Happy to stay in touch. Maybe something will come out of this down the road. Definitely let's keep in contact. 3 or 4 years went by, and I ended up connecting with him on a project called Clown in a Cornfield. It's a YA slasher novel. It is now the 3rd book in the series, is coming out with HarperCollins. It's now a movie coming out with Temple Hill, I believe, next year. His name is Adam Caesar. He's a Stoker winner. Great guy, very good client of mine. Very big fan of his work, obviously, very big fan of him. But that 3 books with Harper and that movie came out of a conversation we had 6-7 years ago about a book that wasn't even the book I took on. So my point earlier about how conferences and networks pay off, they do. It's a great testament to Adam, because he was continuing to write. He kept grinding away for years and years and years. And just the relationships you make and the people you meet. I know it's hard sometimes, because authors, to be a bit stereotypical, some authors are a little introverted, a little more quiet. They're not much for gregarious socializing, and that's totally fine. But you are going to meet somebody at a conference, regardless of your social anxiety level, that is going to pay off for you down the road. Be it an agent, be it an editor, be it an author friend who gets you in a writer's group, who gets you an agent, whatever it is, the relationships you make at these conferences will pay off at some point. So I always advise authors to go to as many as you possibly can, and you learn things about craft as well. There's no downside to it whatsoever.
Wow. Great story. And I assume Adam did nothing to reach out to you until he just sent you, he communicated with you 3 years later. You remembered the conversation, or at least enough of it, and you recognized the writing style, and away you go.
Yeah, thought he'd be a good fit. He would occasionally email me, I'd occasionally email him. We're both, love horror movies, especially bad horror movies. We kind of bonded over. And then he's now doing great for himself. He's a full-time author.
That's fantastic. Well, Alec, this has been an absolutely great rundown, and a really good preview of some of your messages and ideas as you head out. And I'm sure folks got a sense for who you are and what you're into. So can't thank you enough for your time today and jumping on the podcast. And we'll see you in Colorado in September.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.